If people traveled more, we'd have far fewer problems in the world because they would get to see that beneath it all, we're all the same. We have the same aspirations and goals. If you don't understand someone, then that's when the fear factor can come to the fore. And out of the fear come a lot of bad things.
Every journey has a story, and every story has the power to heal. My story hasn't been ordinary. I was adopted. I'm a survivor of abuse and trauma, and I have more than a dozen siblings. That's just the beginning of my story. Life has taken me on a long and winding road of healing and personal growth, a journey that ultimately led me back to myself and the path I was meant to walk. Along the way, I discovered that stories have power, the power to connect us, to help us grow, and even to help us heal. This is Travel Time Stories with Shannon. Real journeys, real stories, and real healing. Imagine driving the entire length of Africa in a Volkswagen bus, crossing deserts, borders, and cultures most people only read about.
Our guest today did exactly that, but his journey wasn't just an adventure. It placed him at the center of some of Africa's most pivotal moments in history.
Today, we're talking about travel, journalism, and what it means to truly witness the world. Welcome back to Travel Time Stories with Shannon, where real journeys meet real stories and healing happens one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Shannon from Texas. Some weeks I fly solo and talk about my own life story of travel adventures, personal healing and growth. And other weeks I'm joined by my best friend, Anne.
Hi, everyone. I'm your co-host, Anne from Missouri, and we sit down with inspiring guests who share their insights, expertise, and personal stories to help all of us along our own journeys.
And today's guest has a truly remarkable story that spans journalism, adventure, and decades of connection to the African continent. So grab your favorite beverage and let's get into it.
Joining us today is Barry Maughan, an international broadcast journalist whose career spans more than 40 years and 5 continents, with a particular focus on Africa.
Barry lived and worked in Ethiopia in the early 1970s as a broadcast and print journalist, where he reported on the historic coup and helped bring global attention to the devastating famine in northern Ethiopia.
In between his years in Ethiopia, Barry and his wife embarked on an extraordinary overland journey across Africa, traveling from Egypt to South Africa in a Volkswagen Kombi bus and visiting 15 countries along the way.
His memoir, Beneath the African Sun, shares the powerful stories from those early years, both the adventure and the responsibility of bearing witness to history.
Barry, we're so honored to have you with us today.
Well, glad to be here, Shannon and Ann. And, all I can say is fools venture in where angels fear to tread sometimes.
That's so true.
As I will point out.
So, Barry, let's start this conversation with what sounds like an incredible adventure. You and your wife traveled the length of Africa in your Volkswagen Kombi bus from Egypt all the way to South Africa. What inspired you to take that journey?
Serendipity, if you can call that an inspiration. In a nutshell, we had been working in New York City without children at the time, and were going really nowhere in our careers. They weren't really what we were looking for, all told. And he said, well, if we're going to travel, we both had the wanderlust, then let's do it now. And to our parents' consternation, we decided that we would get on a tramp steamer and go to Antwerp. But before then, we had purchased a Volkswagen Kombi bus from Wolfsburg, Germany. So we landed in Antwerp and with our 5 or 6 huge duffel bags, and I have a picture in the book of my wife then having the task of somehow stuffing all that into the Volkswagen Kombi bus. But anyway, we spent the next few months, wonderful months, touring around Europe, Austria, Switzerland, the UK, France, Germany, and ended up in Norway, where it started to get a little chilly. And we said, we got to find somewhere to spend the winter. Well, Portugal and Spain were the favorite spots, but then someone said, how about Morocco? And they said, okay, well, that could be another adventure. Why don't we land in Alexandria, Egypt, and then we'll turn west and drive across Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Algeria, and then Morocco, and we'll winter there. So we decided, but before we do that, we'll just go on a cruise liner, and we'll put Bridget on board, which is our name of our Kombi bus, and let's just do a little touring beforehand. Well, we landed in Alexandria and decided, well, we'll get our documents in order, which we had done previously, all the visas and the carnet de passage, which we had to have for the Kombi bus, which just means that you are legally responsible for, if you do sell the Kombi, in this case, within the country, that you will pay the taxes and everything. Anyway, one day before we were ready to set off across our journey across North Africa, a chap by the name of Muammar Gaddafi decided to stage a coup against King Idris and close the borders for the foreseeable future. So that mark paid to that, and there we were in Alexandria. See, that's serendipity. There we were in Alexandria with, but luckily, another serendipity, I had met a general on board the cruise liner, and we got to talking, became pretty good friends, I might say, Egyptian general, and that part of the world at the time, generals were a dime a dozen. I didn't think anything of it, but I always thought, well, there's a lot of military men hanging around this chap. But he portrayed himself as the president of the Young Men Muslim Association. I thought, well, just like the YMCA president here in the United States. Wrong. So, but he did, as a way of kind of ending the conversation, to say, well, if you're ever in Cairo, look me up. Well, when Gaddafi mark paid to us going across the littoral, we said, well, look, why are we going to turn tail? Because that really would have been an anathema, to turn tail and go back to Europe. Let's just at least see the pyramids and a little bit of Cairo, and which we did, and show up at the offices of who turned out to be Ibrahim el-Tahawi, and I'll tell you what his position was in a minute. And we were having trouble finding accommodation for the Kombi bus, and so I said, well, maybe he can help. Well, I thought, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Show up at his offices. His offices were like you might have one office assistant, and he had like about 6 or 7. And I figured, this guy may be something special. So I presented the card, and I thought, well, I'll cool my heels for half an hour, and he'll eventually come out and say hi. And now I can't help you. That was just a way of getting rid of you. He comes out and effusively hugs me. Oh, Barry, you must come in. You must meet some friends. Well, it turns out this Ibrahim el-Tahawi was the right-hand man to President Abdel Gamal Nasser, the president.
Wow.
And I walk into the office.
Oh, my gosh.
I'd like you to meet some of my buddies who just kind of hanging out and with adult beverages and snacks. And here's Mahmoud Fauzi. He's the Minister of War. Oh, and here's so-and-so Minister of Health. I met half the Egyptian cabinet just hanging out. Well, I thought, oh boy,
Wow.
we're going to be talking politics and economics. No, just what would you ever like to see in Egypt? Well, I said, of course, the Sphinx and the pyramids and the Cairo Museum and da 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 da. Ibrahim says, right, hang on a minute, picks up the phone, speaks in Arabic, and I just know enough Arabic to be dangerous. And in comes this, turned out to be a Lieutenant Basri. I said, now, Lieutenant Basri is going to be your guide for as long as you want. Well, what do you mean? Well, first of all, we're going to put you up in the Gezira Club, which is a very posh tennis affiliated resort out on one of the Nile Islands, and you'll have your own private digs there, and the Kombi bus will be well taken care of. And he said, now, you've said that you wanted to see all these things. All right, every morning at 8 a.m., Lieutenant Basri will pick you up in an air-conditioned limousine, and he will take you to all these places you ever wanted to do free. And
Oh
so it
my
was like a
gosh.
magical carpet ride for the next
How
10 days.
amazing.
I mean, and
Whoa.
that was another serendipity, you see? And look, I've never been afraid to talk to people. But there's no harm in saying hello to people. 90% will be, hey, they'd be very, very friendly. The 10%, maybe they got something on their mind. They just don't want to talk. That's fine. But if I hadn't opened my mouth, then none of that would have happened.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's the opening gambit.
Wow, that's
Wow.
incredible. It's like you
What a
found your own
story.
genie in a bottle.
Amen.
Right?
Amen. And I must say, just to carry it beyond what we're going to talk about now, we became fast friends. And every time I went to Cairo on assignment, I hooked up with Ibrahim in either his apartment or his house, met his family. And when he passed several years later, I mourned because we had become very good friends. More than just
Mm.
acquaintances, we had become very good friends.
Wow. So sad that you lost him.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, he was considerably older than at the time, but so after we got through that, I said, "Well, we're this far." A friend had said, "Well, if you're ever in one of these deals, if you're ever in our neighborhood in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, look me up." Huh? Well, I said, "Well, I'm going to take him up on that offer." But how to get from Cairo to Aswan? Because this was during the time, the War of Affinity with Israel, one of many wars, as you know, that the Egyptians and the Israelis fought down through the years. And he said that that's going to be a problem. They won't allow you to drive down there because what they used to do is they would used to the Egyptians would park their MiGs out on the roads, making it a little more difficult for the Israelis to bomb them. So that was very off limits. But he said, what I'll do is I'll buy you two first class tickets to Aswan, which was about 500 miles south near on the Sudanese border. And we will put Bridget on the first troop train going down that way, and we'll put an armed guard on it. Well, bye-bye, off we go, and get in a luxurious train, and down we go to Aswan. And then every day, with 2 or 3 days, we're looking out there, and hoving into sight is Bridget on top of a flat car, and then this guy with a AK-47 at the right, sitting on the front bumper, and he
that's
was
great.
guarding Bridget. And so, but after that, we were on our own. It was like a fledgling, being kicked out of the nest. Like suddenly I didn't have Ibrahim to help me, but we were in for a penny, in for a pound, because there was no going back. And so it was now our course to make it down to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And I must
Wow.
say, that tour in Ethiopia changed the course of my journalistic career. So another serendipity.
Yeah.
Everything
Wow.
happens for a reason.
Mhm.
Amen. Amen.
Mhm.
And I truly believe that. And I always say to people also that you've got to meet people as you find them. You can't go in as the big shot and start throwing your weight around, and you have to be humble. You
Mhm.
have to
Exactly.
look for the best in people, and if you look for the best in people, then you will find it. And I always say to people, look, how did you find things? Well, the government's not so good, but the people, oh, fantastic. They would, if you're out in the desert and you came across the humblest of people, they would give you half of what they didn't have. And then they would just
Wow.
go out of their way. Many, many times we were stuck. Well, there were no roads back then. I mean, there were mud tracks, as the pictures in the book will show. But just when we thought we were stuck in the mud and couldn't push our way out of the villages, out of nowhere would come people. And they would laugh and they'd push and get us through there and whatever. And were almost, upset when I tried to give them some sort of recompense, a
Mhm.
little money, a little,
Right.
whatever. No, 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 no. We were having fun. Well, they didn't say that. Their English was not all that good, but I understood what they were saying. Is we're just having fun, helping you out, and
Yeah, we
don't,
enjoyed helping you.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and don't tarnish it by with the monetary consideration.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
as you mentioned, traveling across 15 countries overland, of course, is no small undertaking, especially in that era. We didn't have GPS, you know, all our cell phones, whatnot. What was the experience like day to day, especially once your 1-year-old son joined you?
Very, very good question, Ann. And I was going to bring that in because when people ask me today, well, would you do it today? One of the reasons I wouldn't do it today is because it wouldn't be such an adventure. You didn't have, as you rightly said, Ann, you
Mhm.
didn't have the electronic tethers. You didn't have sat phones. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have, all the things, the GPS that you have today. It was, a Michelin map, if you happen to have one for East Africa, that would help a little bit. But what do you put on maps if there are no roads? You know?
Right.
Yep.
And then it was my wife. The book is dedicated to, as is my 1-year-old son, who traveled with us from Addis to Cape Agulha, South Africa. It was a matter of my wife having this uncanny ability to sense directions, and she would just look up at the sun and say, "We should be going in this direction." So, I mean, it was really feeling your way from stop to stop to stop to make sure that you weren't too far off track.
So once your little man joined you, I'm sure that changed your trip quite a bit, right?
Yeah, it did, and for the better. A lot of people say, "Oh, how could you travel with a 1-year-old?" He celebrated his first birthday in the little game park outside of Nairobi, Kenya.
Oh, wow.
But everywhere we went, he was our goodwill ambassador because he was a towhead. Blonde hair, blue
Oh,
eyes, very
yep.
fair, and um, let me give you one example, and it's in the chapter Oneness of Love, and it's probably fab, my best example of the beautiful people of Africa. We were camped somewhere and for lunch, and we were not antisocial. We just wanted a quiet spot. But in Africa at the time, you're never alone. You may think you are. You may scan the horizon, and you think you are, but then almost miraculously out of nowhere, people standing around very, very nicely. No animosity, just curious. So
Mhm.
there was a ring, and we were in the area of southern Sudan, northern Kenya, populated by the Dinka ethnic group, which are Nilotic people. They're tall, aquiline features and whatever, very dark. Anyway, um, there, my wife, Suzanne, had Kevin on her back, son Kevin. And because he had his little hat on because, for the sun. And she's getting lunch ready, and I'm just kind of standing around doing nothing like I always did. She did all the work. Anyway, there was one woman who had a baby about the same age as Kevin, and she was just mesmerized by Kevin. I'm not saying one of these, well, it was the first blonde child she ever saw. I don't know. But she was mesmerized. And she slowly came over. And, it's funny how um, people can tell if there's any danger. My wife
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel that. Kevin didn't feel it. She didn't feel it from us. And she came over and so lovingly reached out and just stroked his side of his face as if she
Oh,
would do her own child, you
Oh.
know? And then they exchanged babies. And it was an iconic moment. And people always say to me, well, why didn't you capture it on film? Well, this was not the era, as you rightly pointed out, Ann, of cell phones where you can do a surreptitious pip, 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 pip. No,
Yeah.
this was
exactly.
single lens reflex time. Got to get the f-stop right. And I got to do this. No, because that would have spoiled the moment. And it didn't last all that long. It was just a few seconds where they were holding each other's baby, and then the moment evaporated. But it's probably the seminal moment of the whole trip because it just epitomized what I always say to people. The ethnicity might be different, the culture might be different, the religion might be different, but boy, just right under the skin, we're all the same.
We're all
And this
people.
was epitomized. We were in the back of beyond of Ethiopia, out near the Somali border, and I just happened to have an interpreter with me because I was on assignment. And we're talking to this family in a little tukul, which is a little hut that Ethiopians in the rural areas live in. Anyway, we're sitting there talking, and of course, they had given us half of their meal, which they probably needed for several days, but we were sharing the meal, sitting around. And I asked him through the interpreter, what do you want out of life? Talking to the gentleman. And he says, I want 3 meals on the table each day for my children. I want a better life for my children. I want as little government interference in our lives as possible. And I don't want my sons going off to fight and possibly die in a foreign war. And I just said to myself, duh.
Yep.
Isn't that what I want? Isn't that what most
Right.
people want?
Yep.
You know?
That's what
And
we all
and
want.
so I mean,
Yep.
there are, I got I got a lot out of traveling in Africa, but I got a lot more from them. And that's what the book is all about. It's not a Mondo Cane type of look at these unwashed individuals and whatever. It's almost my love affair with the continent. As long as you prepare, we met a lot of people on the road stuffing grass in tires because they didn't have the proper tires. They didn't have the proper equipment to take with them, like extra tires and extra chains and whatever. You've got to be prepared because that continent will chew you up and spit you out. It really will. It's tough. It's tough. It's tough on the individuals that are not prepared, and it's tough on vehicles that you are not prepared for the worst. You got to look at the worst case scenario and be prepared for it. And so, yes, the continent is tough, but the resilience of the people and the beauty of the people, it's phenomenal.
It's amazing. What a
Yes.
story. Wow.
I tell people that everywhere I've traveled, that's the one common denominator is that people are just people. We're all the same, no matter where you travel to. We all want the same things. We all, you know, want to help and love each other.
Right. And I got that sense of not gentleness, but there's when I lived in Ethiopia during the creeping coup that uh, ultimately unseated the emperor, who had been around for goodness knows how many 50, 60, 70 years. But anyway, uh, there was only less than a handful of us embedded in the foreign journalists embedded in the country because we were all working for Radio Voice of the Gospel, which is a local international radio station in Addis Ababa. And I happened to work as a freelancer for like Financial Times, the Voice of America, New Zealand Broadcasting, anything to turn a dollar, you know, you know. But even during the coup, we would hear from the compound all heck breaking loose each night where the factions would fight each other and kill, and we'd see trucks just gathering up the bodies in the next, as that there was always a deference for, as they call Ferengis, as long as you didn't muck in, you didn't try to get involved. Good example. I used to have to travel about 5 miles each night from the compound, RVOG compound, to where I filed my stories in the center of Addis. And I was told when things started to get a little hairy, okay, these are the rules. Never more than 20 miles an hour. Always with the inside light on. Always have your documents, proper documents. And when there's a roadblock, you stop and you obey the major, generally a major who would be in control of the roadblock. And this went on night after night because when the creeping coup gathered steam, people were very interested in Ethiopia. I think it was the mystique of the emperor, the Lion of Judah, the speech at the UN back in the turn of the century, past century, and so I had a drumbeat of reportage to carry on each night. But as long as I followed the rules, stopped every night, the different places, I always changed the roadblocks around. But Major would come over very deferentially, Tenastling, hello, in Amharic, Tenastling, Danana, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm a journalist. Here's my credentials. Would you step out, please? Sure, step out. Just to look me over. I just take a look in the my car, and there would be two or three soldiers with AK-47s trained on you. But I never felt afraid because the Ethiopian, the Amharic people are very gentle, civilized, if you will. Now, contrast that with when I had to go on assignment into Uganda. And this was the era of Idi Amin. Well, you didn't know what to expect. He would look at you the wrong way, and you could be marked for assassination.
Oh
Okay,
my gosh.
but during that entire 2 or 3 years of the creeping coup, as we called it, I'd never felt once in fear of my life. Now, there was one time I, I, I used to go out with who was then the first secretary of the British Embassy, Ian Murray, may he rest in peace. Wonderful, wonderful friend and colleague. And we would go to little, what you would call them, we call them Tej baits. It just means little cafes, but kind of in the seedy part of town. And we talked to shadowy officers who we thought were involved with the coup because no one knew for sure. And anyone who tells you otherwise, they weren't there. Anyway, so we did this for a month or so, and so one time I'm in my office and I get a call from Ian. He said, "Come to my office." And we're generally pretty jovial with each other. And I said, "Come to my office." He's deadly serious. I said, "All right, get over here right away." So I drove across town to the British Embassy and came to his office. And he didn't say a word. He just slid a manila envelope over to me. He says, "Open it up." And I opened it up and out rolled a 45 caliber bullet. Now, at the time, the emperor still had his Stasi, East German security force guarding him. And we can only surmise, because we never had proof, that while we were watching the officers, Stasi was watching us. And this was their warning that the next one will go in you. And that was the end of that because we weren't going to play heroes. We both had families and the whole thing. We would get to the story another way. So, but even so, they gave a warning, and I never felt a fear of my life. Another time, I had got a story um, about a place burning down. I won't go into all the details; it's too long. But and I aired it on the at the 6 o'clock news broadcast. It. Luckily, I got it cleared through the censor, so I had all my paperwork in. Well, I no sooner got off of the air and a jeep full of officers pulled up in front of the station and never grabbed me. I won't say that, just asked me to come with them very civilly. So I was bundled in. I said, "May I make a call to my wife? Tell her I'm not coming home for a while." Yeah, yeah. So I made the call and up, and there's a place, an infamous palace in Addis Ababa called the Gibby. Well, the Gibby is has a notorious reputation because in the past, a lot of people who go there never come out. So anyway, I'm ushered into this very plush office, and I'm thinking, "Oh my word!" Anyway, in come these look like colonels and generals, and uh, they said, "Okay, let's see your paperwork." Da, 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 da. Oh, okay, I think you're good to go. I said, "May I ask why I'm here?" He said, "Well, there was an erroneous report that you broadcast that this place burned down, and it was actually some other place that burned down, and that is a very, very sensitive place to our government. And one was tobacco and tobacco monopoly. Well, the Reuters correspondent, bless his heart, was in his cups, and he confused the two. He reported it. I duly but I got it cleared for the censor. And as long as I had my paperwork correctly, "Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Maughan. Um, we'll drive you back to your house, and I'm sorry for the misunderstanding." You see, that
Wow.
would not happen with the with an Idi Amin or someone. So
No.
it was a hairy a time, but halcyon days if you're starting to kind of build a journalistic reputation because you more or less had the field to yourself. I had a few competitors work for the BBC and I worked for the VOA and there were a couple others work for Deutsche Welle, the German news agency, and I think Pravda had a person there, the Russian news agency. But by and large, um, we minded our P's and Q's. We we had to be very, very careful with our reportage because while the emperor was still in power, though his power was very becoming more and more limited, um, they could deport you if they didn't like your reporting. So it taught us another aspect of journalism that you have to be You have to measure your words, and every word that you write or say is very important, as it is in any profession. You just have to
Right.
be very, very careful. You know.
Very
Right.
precise.
Before we continue, I want to share something really special we've created for this community. If you've ever listened to an episode and felt something deeper, like a moment that stayed with you or a story that made you reflect on your own life, we wanted to give you a place to go with that. We've officially launched our Travel Time Stories membership, where you can go beyond listening and become part of the experience. Inside the membership, you'll get access to the Story Circle, our private community where we reflect on each episode through guided journal prompts, share our stories, and connect through monthly meetups. There are also additional tiers with opportunities to go even deeper, from storytelling and sharing your voice to being part of the creative journey behind the scenes and joining us on our yearly group travels. If this speaks to you, you can join us through the link in the show notes or visit our website, traveltimestories.com. We would truly love to have you join the community.
So
Yes, exactly.
I was wondering, while you were in Ethiopia during your time there, you witnessed one of the most significant moments in Ethiopian history, the coup that toppled Emperor Haile Selassie in 1974. What
Right.
was it like reporting on such a dramatic and uncertain moment in history?
Well, it was a daily adventure because being the international radio station under the tutelage and the protection of the emperor, when he started to lose power, then that was limited as well. But then we would start getting um, these edicts, these announcements every day that we had to broadcast. They were coming from this shadowy group. And at first it was, Ethiopia ticked them. Long live Ethiopia, da, 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 and long live the emperor. And then about 2 months later, you'd have that same diatribe, but then no longer long live the emperor. And then, so you could tell that the coup was gathering steam just by this. And so I just kind of kept them in a box under my desk. And um, various journalists who have written about the coup have been given access to them because it was an unfolding of the coup and by a day to day look. Unfortunately, or fortunately, you would have some organizations like the BBC and all that. They would fly in people and they would use local talent as someone to bring them up to speed. So you'd sit down with them, and be paid for this as the man on the scene, and you would go through the story. Then you would have other organizations. The person who flew in tried to tell you more about the story than you knew yourself. Okay. Or you would have people, well, I guess I will say the organization was Newsweek. And the journalist never left the Hilton bar. So I met him there, and
Wow.
he was in his cups, and he said in a slurry voice, "Well, if you had to write the lead for something like this, the next edition, what would you say?" I said, I just off the top of my head, because I wanted done with this guy. I mean, he's just a poser. Oh, the creeping coup in offices and all that. Well, the next edition, there it was, almost word for word.
Oh my
So
gosh.
so there's been a lot of misconceptions about who started the coup, how it evolved because of poor reportage by people like that. But By and large, the people I work with worked very, very assiduously to get it straight, to get the story. But it was very difficult because it was like trying to grab mercury. It kept going through your hands. You couldn't pick it up. It was all over the place. So that's why you cultivated very good sources like the aforementioned Ian Murray of the British Embassy, and it it was exciting, was demanding, and ultimately very satisfying when you got it right, or as right as anyone could get it. And you can go back and look at your reportage from start to finish and say, hmm, yeah, I think I did my best. And that's all you can do in a situation like that. Because if you get too nosy, then one of those bullets that was sent to us in the mail or dropped off at the embassy uh, would end up in you.
Right. So, another deeply significant part of your work was reporting on the devastating famine in northern Ethiopia. And for many people around the world, journalists like you were the first to bring attention to that crisis. So, do you feel the weight of being one of the few journalists telling the world what was happening?
Oh, definitely, definitely, yeah. And I must say that the I wasn't alone, though. If I'm swarthy in complexion, so I was able to through my connections with the aid organizations hitch a ride up there. As long as I didn't open my mouth and I had the proper credentials and knew a little Amharic to get by the roadblocks, because emperor, the Garden of Eden, there's nothing ever wrong in the Garden of Eden. And so he didn't want anyone knowing about the drought. And that's what made it so devastating, because he kept international aid organizations out. So I was in one of the first to go up there. And it's, as a journalist, you learn that you see and experience a lot of things, but you've got to have almost like an outer shell. Otherwise, you can't be objective. And but as we got closer to Wallo Province, you would see old men and women just sitting by the side of the road, supplicating, just
Mm.
chanting for in Amharic for food and whatever. And you'd see animals um, half dead and people hacking off, things off of the flesh off of them to eat. And and then we got to the one of the feeding stations in Desi, and the thousands and thousands of people just milling around trying to get at the grain that had been locked away. Why was the grain locked away? Because it was impregnated with herbicides and insecticides for the next crop, or hoping when the rains came that they could then plant this, and it would have killed the people if they could get at it. And you had the soldiers whipping them back because of the frenzy, trying the people could see the bags of grain in there and they wanted at it. So we were in the midst of all this, and I luckily had um, one of my handlers with me who spoke Amharic, obviously, and there was this woman who appeared out of nowhere with this emaciated baby. I mean, more skeleton than alive. And I rolled down the window, and she instinctively just thrust the baby into my arms.
Oh my gosh.
And My handler said, "You can't keep that baby." I said, "Why not? I can do it. Maybe take it somewhere, hospital." Da, da. No, 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 no. You can't do that. You must give that baby back. And I did. Now, I did snap a picture and it went viral, as the young kids say nowadays. And it was picked up by AP and UPI and whatever. But only to find out 24 hours later the baby was dead from malnutrition. But I would hope that that picture helped. I believe that the ones that really blew the lid off the story, because a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yes.
And Jonathan Dimbleby of the BBC and people got wind of this and got in there somehow. And the lid was blown off. And and this cracked the facade that the Ethiopian government was trying to portray, that nothing bad ever happened in the Garden of Eden, the land of Solomon and Sheba, Uh, so we did, we did place our careers on the line because we worked for a Christian radio station. And our feeling was, we know what's going on up there, a few hundred miles to the north. How can we as Christians sit down here and broadcast, though we were not there to spread the gospel? We were there to get the news, get the audience. So we were hired as journalists, not as missionaries per se, but just to know that that was happening up there. Our journalist instinct says we must get that out to the world. And the station said, well, you'll be in violation of your contract, because they were beholden to the emperor, you see.
Mhm.
And so the only way we could do it is, one would, we had a small staff. We would ask our fellow journalists if they would cover for us for our shifts, and so we could go up for a few days and do the reportage, and then we would do likewise for them. But yeah, my hat's off to Jonathan Dimbleby and more the power, not the individual, but the medium, the power of television. The picture worth 1,000 words. But I
Yes.
think that we did play our the embryonic role of at least bringing it to the attention of the television people, who then blew the lid off the story. But that was the one time, as you probably noted, even now, it's very, very hard. You think you're a battle tested and cynical journalist, but you're also a human being. And seeing that, and the scope of it, I went through the interpreter. We talked to this old man, and he asked, well, is this all the people who have been affected by the, and he pointed out towards the surrounding mountains, and he says, these are the lucky ones. Many, many thousands could not get over the mountains to even get to the feeding stations or get to the road.
Oh.
So
Wow.
that was a toughie. But we I speak for them as well, because it's a brotherhood. We did uphold the finest tenets of journalism. That we put our careers on the line. We could have lost our jobs, and um, who knows where we would have gone after that. But and this is not the great I am. No, I was just doing my job. Yeah, yeah, the job of journalism, and that's what we have to strive for as journalists. We have to be objective and hardworking and be the eyes and ears for people who can't be there themselves, who might be interested in helping or at least knowing about it.
I'm not even sure how you processed what you were seeing, to be honest with you.
It's tough. It's tough, but you know, you have to process it. Otherwise, you can't do your job effectively because the next day there's going to be another story. There's going to be a story, the 50 British school kids on their way from Kenya to London and landing in Addis, and the plane cracks open, and you see the kids running from the plane, 1 minute white, the next minute black, because jet fuel you can't see. You can't see jet fuel, and you're there trying to cover that. You have to. It's nothing that any journalist of long standing hasn't had to go through, and it doesn't make me any better than them. It just means that yeah, I've seen a few things.
Yeah,
Something you have to put on the shell.
Yeah, really.
exactly. Because it's important for the world to see and understand these realities.
Right, and okay, they may empathize with the boo-hoo and whatever, but that's not your job. Your job is to because once you become too emotionally connected, you lose objectivity. And
Yeah,
the main thing is to maintain your objectivity.
Yeah.
And once you go down that road, you can't. Yes, I allowed myself to shed tears, but my next report was, okay, she was there, and this happened, and that happened, and the baby died, and da 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 da, and you just that's the way you have to approach it.
Well, you've said that Africa is truly in your blood. After spending so much of your life connected to the continent, what does it mean to you personally?
Well, it's in my blood, literally and figuratively. Literally, it's I have malaria, and I've had leishmaniasis and typhoid and paratyphoid.
oh
Oh
my
my
But
goodness.
goodness.
you know, um, it means a lot to me, but it also has meant a lot to my children. Kevin, both my children were born in Ethiopia, um, and growing up as minorities has helped them understand the workings of the world and where they're the place in the world. All their friends growing up, Muti and a lot of other ones were African. No big deal. That's just how it was. And that's held them in good stead. My son has opened up offices in places as, like, for instance, India, and landed in Delhi. And he'd been to Delhi, so he knew they always drive by their horn, "Wah, wah, wah, wah," and the cacophony and the noise and the strange smells and whatever. He was ready to go. Well, his team took about 2 days to get acclimated. They were gobsmacked, huh? Huh? Because they'd never been out of the US. This was something new to them. My daughter, 2 years, younger than Kevin, Angeline, she works for, an adoption agency. So she's rubbing shoulders with people from around the world, and so she has a certain empathy, or she has a connection with them that she wouldn't have had, had she not been born in Ethiopia and spent the first 2 or 3 years of her life there. So I'm grateful to the continent for that reason. I'm also grateful to the continent for showing us that all wealth is not just material. Wealth can be of the spirit, can be of how you treat your family. Like, for instance, there's an ethnic group called the Ik that live in Western Kenya. And as folks get older, then when they can no longer go out and hunt and do what farm and whatever, then they are allowed to take care of the children. They mind the children, and then their chores are commensurate with their abilities. But the one thing that sets them apart is then at one point they are allowed just to walk out on the desert or into the forest and die on their own volition. They have control over that. Then they go out, the body, they venerate the body. Everything is done properly, but their self dignity is held intact throughout their lives. They're not thrown away like a bit of trash. And this happens in so many African societies. They venerate their elderly. The older generation, the griots, the oral tradition, where the centuries of storytelling has kept cultures alive. The mores and of ethnic groups alive through the older people sitting younger people at their knee and telling them about the past, so it can be passed down from one generation to the next. And there's a lot to be said for that, to
Hmm.
involve the elderly um, in the affairs of the younger. And I try to keep that in mind. Now I'm in the ripe young age of 84. That I want to be of service uh, to my grandchildren, and hopefully in the years to come, I'm spared, my great grandchildren, to pass along. And and it goes full circle now. This is one of the reasons why I wrote this book, is to have this connective tissue within my family. It started out as, oh, I'll just type up a few pages, go down to Staples or Kinko, drive a cover, put a staple in it, make maybe 20 or 30 copies, hand it out to family and friends, and then one thing led to another, and da 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 da. And Beneath the African Sun was slowly but surely born.
Well, there you go. Another serendipitous moment there.
There you go. That's why
Exactly.
I said
Exactly.
that's throughout. So I'm fascinated, and I'm so thankful to share. It's not my story. It's a story about a wonderful continent and peoples. And I think anyone who reads Beneath the African Sun will get a sense of that through the 300 pages, including about 39 photos. Me with a lot more hair than I have now and looking a lot more youthful. That's all right. And I thank people like you who spread the word about travel, because, and I'll end on this note if you don't mind. If people traveled more, we'd have far fewer problems in the world, because they would get to see that beneath it all, we're all the same. We have the same aspirations and goals. We may go about it a different way. And, if you don't understand someone, then that's when the fear factor can come to the fore. And out of the fear come a lot of bad things.
Yes. I love your
Exactly.
unique
Amen to
philosophy
that,
on
Barry.
Mhm.
I
Ugh.
say that all the time, that I feel like every person should be required to travel somewhere else, and not just travel on vacation, but to actually travel somewhere else and immerse yourself in the culture and the people and truly experience that place. It will change your views, it will change your life, and that's how we could change the world.
Exactly.
A special thank you to Barry. His life and career has such a powerful reminder of how travel and storytelling can connect with the world, and how bearing witness, whether through journalism or personal experience, can help people better understand both history and humanity. We will have Barry's information in the show notes and on our website. So for everyone listening, that's where you can find out Barry's information and get a copy of his book, Beneath the African Sun. I'm personally excited. Can't wait to read it. And we hope today's episode reminds you that travel isn't just about seeing the world, it's about understanding it.
Until next time, keep traveling, keep learning, and keep making memories for life.